This is going to be a demonstration of how to harvest honey using the crush and strain method. First of all, we need all the proper equipment. You'll see here a knife, a sharp knife for cutting the honey off of the frame, and a rubber spatula. There are 2 pestles, just because sometimes I like to switch around. The big pan is big enough to hold the honey that gets cut off of the frame, and it's lined with a silicone sheet that you can cut on. It's a flexible cutting board, and the pan at the back is for leaning the frame against when I'm finished getting the honey off of it. We also have a bucket here that's a straining bucket. It has a honey gate on one side. You'll notice everything is lined with cardboard. There's cardboard under the bucket that I'm going to be putting the honeycomb into. There's cardboard on the counter under the pans to catch the drips, and there's cardboard under the super that's waiting for me to lift the honey frames out of it. So here we go. We'll see how this goes, and I will try to show you how to do honey using crush and strain. Okay, this is going to be how to do crush and strain honey. Here we have a beautiful frame of honey. You can see both sides of it are capped, and it's gotten a little damaged in the process of getting it off of the hive. First thing I want to do is to cut the honey comb off of the frame so that it ends up in the pan that you see down below. So I'm going to take my sharp knife and I go through the wax all the way down to the bottom, and I go through the wax on the other side all the way down to the bottom. Then I'm going to cut it out right about in the middle so that it will fall into the pan. And there it goes. And the other half has to be cut off the top, and there it goes. So now I have my honey in the honeycomb in the pan to be crushed. It's sitting on top of a silicone mat, which makes it a little bit easier to do the crushing, to move the crushed honey into the straining bucket. And the straining bucket is in my way at the moment, so I'm going to move it. And I get the pestle, and I'm going to leave this frame in this pan to drain some, and I will then use the honey that's in that pan in a few minutes. Scrape this off of the knife blade into the pan. I'll move the knife out of the way, and now I get the joy of squashing the honey, crushing it. It's a lot of fun. It's delicious honey. The bees have done quite well. We're in the middle of the worst drought in Georgia in 50 years, and the bees on this particular hive have been quite productive in spite of having minimal rain, 0 to be exact. We had such a little bit of rain the other day that even when I went out in my garden after it had rained a good bit of the night, I dug down into the soil and 1/3 of an inch was damp, and after that it was dry as a bone. Okay, I'm crushing the honey. You can watch the honey being crushed right here. You want to get it pretty well pulverized, because when you put it into the strainer, you want it to not be hooked to the comb and feel quite free to go through the little filter. So now, knock some of the honey off of the pestle, set the pestle in this pan that I will later on use my rubber spatula to put into the straining bucket. I lift up the silicone mat filled with honey. Okay, now you can watch the honey being moved into the straining bucket. It's on a piece of flexible plastic that's a cutting board. So I hold it over the honey bucket and use my rubber spatula to push the honey comb, the crushed wax, and honey down into the straining bucket. The rubber spatula really helps. I'm struggling a little bit because for some reason my straining bucket, which doesn't usually slip around, is slipping around. So in a few minutes I'm going to put something underneath it to keep it from sliding so badly. I'm putting this into a filter that's a 600 micron filter. Daynat sells a set of 3. I was reading that some people put all 3 on the bucket at the same time. Personally, last year I just used the 600, and this year I'm doing it again, and it seems to be just fine. So, okay, I get this sheet all cleared off, and I'll move it back into the pan where I do my crushing, and that's ready to just drain into the bucket. And when it's through draining, then we'll bottle it. As my mother would say, it's hot as blue blazes in Atlanta today, and even though this is the end of the day, it's about 5 o'clock, I'm putting the honey out in its bucket with a brick on it in case any little critter comes along and wants to try to knock it over, and I'm going to let it sit there and filter as the sun sets. This is how we bottle the honey after it's been filtered. You open the gate on the bucket into which it's been filtering and let the honey pour into the jar. I'm holding this with a clean towel. The towel has some stains on it, but it is a clean towel. Because this honey is not jarred in the kind of jars that can be put into a honey show, honey contest, but if you were putting honey into a honey contest, what they actually judge your honey on is how cleanly it was packaged, more than they judge it on the honey, because the bees are in charge of the honey. So how you handle the honey is what they judge the honey on. So it's very important to have few fingerprints on your jars. So there we have it, a finished jar of honey. There it is, beautifully done. Thank you, bees. The honey from these 6 frames right here, after just an hour and a half of filtering, made 12 jars of honey, 12-ounce jars of honey, and a 12-ounce jar of honey weighs a pound. So I've got 12 pounds of honey from 6 frames right now. The filter, the caps in the filter look like this at the moment. Now that does look pretty well filtered, I'm sure, to some of you, but if you pick it up, it's very heavy. It still has a good bit more filtering to go, and I expect to get probably at least 6 more pounds of honey. So I have a little 12 jars are going to sit overnight, and the last step was to put my little label on it. So now you've learned all about crush and strain honey, and thanks for watching.